The Chinese Chariot. Throughout thousands of eras, chariots have been used as modes of transportation, or races as the Romans had used it for. It usually consisted of two wheels held together by an axle. The chariot carried a platform that in most cases held 1 to 3 people at a time. By using a specific type of tree, the Chinese were able to heat it up enough to bend it into the shape of the wheel. They also used natural tree configurations to make the rails of the chariot. The chariot had a very intriguing design, including wheels that were around 4 feet tall. This helped manage the smoothness of the ride. It also had an extensive platform that was made to hold 3 people at a time. The latch used to connect the chariot to the horse was made in such a way so that it gave the horse less of a burden, which was necessary because people at the war, you needed your horses as strong as possible to keep the men strong. Before the chariot began being used in China around 1200 BC, people used to go to war walking or running. For high commanding officers, horses were used to lead themselves into battle. There is very little information about how the Chinese were introduced to the chariot. Some sources state that the chariots were first used in the Battle of Gan in the 21st century BC, although there is little to support this theory. The first solid evidence for the use of the Chinese chariot was in 1200 BC. From that time forward, there is evidence to show that the Chinese chariots were used often for war. With the very exquisite way it was made, it allowed there to be a driver in the center of the chariot, an archer on one side, and if needed, a man who used a sword to plunge into nearby enemies. The Battle of Gan was said to have chariots used to fight the war on the side of the Xia dynasty. The Chinese chariot, unlike the Egyptian chariot, was explicitly made for war. It introduced a way to make the chariot even stabler than any other chariot. They had the wheels with the 4 feet diameter and had over 18 spokes per wheel. This minimized the bumpiness of the ride, helped stabilize it, and was guaranteed to keep working if it lost a spoke during battle. On the top is the picture or drawing of an Egyptian chariot, and as you can see, it only has 6 spokes, and on the bottom is the Chinese chariot. As you can see, they have over 18 spokes, which was necessary because if someone said, let's say, plunged a sword into one of them, they would still be able to keep going because of the extra spokes pulling the weight. The chariots were a leading sign of strength in China. Chariots were found in burials of influential people. The more someone had, the more important he was, as was figured out when a Chinese tomb was found containing lots of chariots. The famous terracotta army was found to contain Chinese chariots along with the soldiers. On the bottom is a picture of the chariots with the terracotta soldiers behind them. The Chinese chariot was one of the few chariots to have been used in war successfully and had some significant improvements to help accommodate it to the landscape on which it was used. The chariot was one of the reasons that the Chinese were able to win a lot of battles. And this is my bibliography.